just under 100 million a year. What I really realized was hold the buildings forever. Refi when you be patient. Had I thought longer earlier in my career, I would have done a lot better, but hey, you learn by your mistakes, hopefully. If you get to up to 100 units, where are you going to go from there? Up, it's fine, just refi and go get another 100 unit building. I only do fixed. I used to have floating rates, and that's how I lost my ass in the early 90s.
Jerry, welcome to the podcast. I'm here with my esteemed guest, Jerry Marcil. I'm your host, Taylor Avakian, and today we're going to be talking about Jerry's journey, a lot of stuff. I'm very happy to be here. I appreciate you for having me. I did some math. I did some calculations, a little prep before this. So you tell me how accurate I am. So if from conversations you had, you said you had about 4,000 apartments. I know you picked up like 6 last year and then 1 this year. So I'm going to add maybe another 500. 4,500 times an average of like $2,000 per unit. That's like 10 million gross of income from the rental properties that you have. Is that like within striking distance of accuracy?
Yeah, that's within striking distance. I would say we're just under 100 million a year in gross.
100 million a year in gross.
I saw it somewhere over, just a little over 90 for sure.
And this started with a 4-unit in Redondo Beach.
It did.
Tell me about that.
Well, I started, when I got out of college, I was waiting to open a bar restaurant business with a friend of mine, but he had 6 months to go to graduate. And so I already had a real estate license, but I hadn't done very much with it. And
was it like a backup plan? Was the real estate license like if anything?
Well, a friend of mine was doing quite well in it, and he talked me into it, and I got my license, and working 3 summers, 3 years prior, it was when I got the license, prior to my graduation, and he was doing really well. I didn't do so well. I did some open houses for 3 summers in a row, and I made 1 sale to my cousin. And he bought a house in Hermosa Beach. So I thought that wasn't for me, but I didn't want to go get trained by a major corporation for just 6 months. I definitely knew I wanted to go into my own business.
Yeah.
I didn't want to work for somebody else. I had figured that out. But I went back into it, and the market was hot. And so, I made a couple deals in the first month, and then about 4 more deals in the second month. And I went, wow.
As an agent.
Yeah, I just made more money than I made in a whole year as a machinist. When I went to college, I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and half day Saturday as a machinist. Put all my classes on Tuesday, Thursday. Did all my homework on Sunday. That was
the routine.
Party on Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
But you had the routine. It was set up.
That was the routine.
And so you were 21, 22 at this time?
Yeah, I started as a machinist at 15 and a half because that's when you could get a worker permit. And so that till I was 21 or 2, then I worked for a painter who painted inside of apartments, outside of houses, and I worked for him for a little over a year, and that was my last year of college. I made more money at that because I decided that, instead of getting paid hourly, I'll get paid by the job, and then I realized that is the only way to go in life, is get paid by the job. So then I went into a commission business where I just either you perform and get paid, or you don't perform and you starve.
You lose.
Yeah.
You eat or you kill. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen many of the brokers.
Got to kill to eat, sort of. You can say it that way. I don't like to put it that way, but because in the first couple of years, that was really my philosophy.
You reap what you sow.
Well, my philosophy was that I was very competitive, and I want to be better than the other agents, or do more than the other agents. And it wasn't just about making money; it was just about
what were you doing that you felt like you were differentiating yourself? Like, how did you differentiate yourself as an agent in that beginning stages?
I worked harder.
Just more hours.
I was working. One time, I worked 51 days straight. Without a break. I worked some days 14-hour days. No, I was crazy.
Were you cold calling people? How did you get business?
Well, we didn't have the internet or computers, etc. I would, drive down to the local board and see people would drop off their listings, and I would be the first one to look at other people's listings. I would stand there and watch them come in and start looking and go, "Oh, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good." And then I go look at the property, and I just get ahead of everybody
Mm.
and do that. And after a couple of years, I changed my attitude. Instead of like thinking about making the commission, I changed it to just doing what was best for the client, best for the buyer or the seller. And sometimes, and I'll give you a story,
Yeah.
is that, this person came in an open house and we were talking about it, and and I got all their background information, and I said, no, this house, they actually wanted to make an offer. And I said, no, I don't think this house is for you. This is what you guys should really be doing. And I explained it to them. And, that's when it changed, and it changed my whole life, my whole career, because yeah, I lost the sale, and those people did go by. About a year later, I get a call from somebody, and they go, "Hey, I want to work with you to buy a house." And I'd go, "Oh, okay, great." He goes, "Yeah, so and so referred me." I go, "Oh, I remember them." And yeah, I didn't make a sale, and then my business just took off like crazy because all I was focused on was making other people
Mm-hmm.
happy, or if it was income property, which I was getting into selling, which I'm more used to because it's a business thing. So
Mm-hmm.
income property, duplexes, fourplexes, and stuff like that, not big buildings. Things. So, uh, yeah, it's a different realm, but
And
it
then
was,
how does that 4 unit come?
yeah, and then it was a different realm, but it was the same attitude, trying to do the best for the client.
Did you see people making money in the investment space and you said, I think I could do that?
Well, in my first year, I found a fourplex in North Redondo. I think we talked about that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and it was my first investment. I talked my broker into putting in 25%. Actually, I didn't have to. He was pretty smart. He wanted in. My painting contractor I worked for put up half of the money, and then I borrowed some money from my dad, and I had some money, and I bought 25% of it. I managed it. I sold it. So we put $15,000 down on a $35,000 fourplex in North Redondo.
35,000?
We put no, sorry, 50. We put 30. Sorry, 13,500. 10% down.
Okay. On a 135.
Yeah, and then and in a year I sold it after cleaning it up a little bit, not putting any money into it really, and sold it for 150,000. So that was, doubling our money, a little more than doubling money in a year. And now you have to remember, this was 1976, so back then that was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I was really hooked on sticking with the income property, and I faded away only into income property. And people were, I was like dealing with, say, lawyers or accountants or doctors, some people that had money that just wanted to kind of invest in their future and start working on their retirement plan, et cetera, but they didn't want to manage the buildings. But I had a degree in management from USC, and I met, or I knew a guy in school, and at SC, and I said, "Hey, how about opening a property management company?" And he was up for it. I said, "Oh," and I go, "I'll bring in the business, and you manage the deals, and we'll split the money." And so that was what we did, because I got to a point where I had about 70 units I was managing, but they're all small. The largest one was 9 units, and some of them were duplexes. And I was just spending my time managing, and it wasn't what I was best at. I was best at finding and analyzing. Pretty good. I'm pretty good analyzer of
Yeah.
the deals. Having a little bit of a math background helps on that.
Uh-huh.
So that's what got started, and I would raise money, and like I did with the fourplex. But after doing that for a while and making other people a lot of money, which was my focus, and I would take small parts of the deal uh, based on how much money I had in the bank. I decided it would be a lot easier just to go off on my own and just buy my own stuff, because then you don't have the effort of raising the money. You don't have the effort of satisfying those people, because they got questions all the time, based on how much money they're making.
So you weren't, you at a certain point switched from syndication to just doing your own deals.
Yep.
When was that?
I would say that started about the middle of the 80s, so 1985, 86. So after being in it for 10 years, it started right there.
Did you at any point in time in the future raise money for certain deals? Or was it all the rest of the deals from then on, you've only done with your own money?
Not all of them. For a long stretch of time, maybe 20 years it was. But, I met some guys I really like in the business, and they wanted to invest with me, and they were more like friends, and they knew the business, and they weren't going to bother me, because if we put a roof on the building and then, you don't get any payment, any cash flow for a couple months, and then I get all these phone calls, I don't need it. So they don't call me. They understand the
Got
business.
it.
So after that, the only people I went in with were people who understood the business.
Got it.
And it was what you would call friends and family. So that would be it. So, but still the majority, 2/3, 3/4 of the properties I bought them myself.
Were you
100% myself.
Were you, the way that you were making the money to go and buy the continuing to buy the properties, was that because you were buying, B, C properties, fixing them up, and then refinancing and going and buying again? Was that kind of the value add strategy that you were implementing in that 20-year period?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because of refi, you refi tax free.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get taxed on refis.
Were they giving you 75%, 80%?
There were times when they were.
Really?
Yeah, that was people. I always remember times when it was 85% in the early 90s, where the banks just wanted, there was an earthquake out in the valley, and they were, a lot of buildings were red tagged or yellow tagged, and I went out there and say, because I had really taken a big hit in business in 89 to 92. In fact, I went from a positive net worth to a negative net worth because I was developing from the ground up, and I got hit with a bad market.
Did you want bigger checks? Is that why you went into development, or it was just a new challenge for you?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Problem with the development business is that it's ordinary income, and it's all taxable. So, give half of it back to the government.
Mm-hmm. Because you weren't refinancing, you were selling these developments.
Yeah,
It's
the
built
government
itself.
becomes your partner if you make money, but they walk away if you lose. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That partnership right
that
there.
partnership with the government really, what I really realized was hold the buildings forever. Refi when you be patient. Refi the buildings. Now in the beginning, I had no patience, and I didn't do that. Had I thought longer, earlier in my career, I would have done a lot better, but hey, you learn by your mistakes, hopefully.
So,
In fact, the mistakes will get repeated until you learn them.
yeah, until you learn them enough. It's funny though, because it's kind of this chicken or the egg, it feels like, at least in today's market when I'm talking to investors, because the structure of these syndication deals for today's market, you're going to need a lot of money, $250,000 to buy $1 million building at least in Los Angeles. So $250,000, right? You put that in, let's say it takes a year and the building's worth 1.25, and that's a great outcome. 25% IRR in a year, that's really, really good. Yeah. So you pull money out, but right now you're pulling out maybe 65, 70% at best. And so
that's very at best. Right now, it's closer to the average deal is at 50%.
So yeah, you're pulling 50% out.
That's your average deal.
Right. And so you still got the money in. It's like this. It's very hard because they make money when there's some sort of, there's a transaction, right? There's a sale or a refinance. So they're incentivized to do one of two of those things, either refinance or sell. But it's kind of this conflicting set of interests, because maybe the best course of action is to hold on to them long term, right? If you could hold it out, but then they're only making money on the management fees or the asset management fees or anything like that. So it's not much to live on, right? And to get that big pop, that promote that you want, that 4x, 3x, 2x your money, you kind of have to do something like that.
It takes patience. If you have patience, you make a lot more money.
So you think today,
yeah,
if you were telling me like, hey, you wanted to go buy a bunch of properties, you would say buy a property, C property, turn it to a B, refinance it, hold that forever, and go try to find that next property and do the same thing over and over again.
Not necessarily. Once you have to get up to a certain size of building where you can get a good on-site manager. You want to get up to about 40 units before you start keeping them. If you're building this, you know, whatever, I don't even know how to put it, but you know, your fortune, I guess,
Yeah.
would be the thing. You know, how I did author part of a book called How to Build a Real Estate Empire. And
that was on my
had to
desk.
think about it when writing my chapter. I think I wrote a quarter of the book, and that helped me actually think about it. I go, well, you know, there's no point in, once you get to like about a 40 unit building, you may as well keep that building and then, you know, refi but you have to think long. But the beauty of a building at that size is that you can get a pretty good on-site manager. It changes your life. You know, and that's
That makes the
key.
life a lot easier.
Yeah, when I had those 4 units and 6 unit buildings, and I was, you know, all I could do was manage
Yeah.
back then, and so, you know, I learned that the hard way. I was a good manager because that's what I know. Um, but the money really is in thinking long and getting your money out tax free. Now, if you want to sell and trade up, I mean, what's up? I mean, if you get to up to 100 units, where are you going to go from there? Up? It's fine. It's fine. You know, just refi and go get another 100 unit building. Because, you know, at that point, the economies of scale really pay off on the management. You know, one of the things that's a problem for people, one of the advantages I have is I don't mind managing. It's work, but
You have to be able to take the punches.
yeah, and I do manage well. They want to get a management company that has no money in the deal, and that company's got to make money off of you. They have to make money, and so they're cutting back on people's salaries and things like that. And you're not getting the best in price, and they got nothing at stake. That's, you know, that was the big difference between me and just a regular investor. As I own my management company, I grew that, hired a really smart CEO.
Got it.
And so I go out.
Do you third party for anyone?
Yeah.
Or you just your guys' units?
No, that's what we call fee management. We don't do that.
You don't do that.
Yeah, we manage in a different way.
Yeah,
It's our money.
Yeah.
And we think long, and we
you have a long-term perspective on things.
Yeah, we'll work a little harder at it because I also let some of my employees invest in the deals too.
Got it.
That makes them a little more motivated.
They got some skin in the game.
They got skin in the game. In fact, I got 5 of them. My 5 top people have all invested,
which is huge. I mean, you're making, you know, your people ideally have legacy wealth or wealth that they can pass down to their kids. Like that must be fulfilling for you to be able to have that opportunity to do.
Yeah, I get excited for them. I mean, I already know my family's taken care of.
Yeah.
But I see, you know, they're excited too, and they work harder, and they're really into it. You know, and I do have partners in deals, but like I said, there are partners that understand the business and they're happy to be a partner. I won't go into any deal where I don't have at least 50% of the deal. I mean, I got to put up 50%.
Yeah.
Because there's only so much time. And I remember back in the day when, you know, I had either nothing or very little in the deal, and I was working full time to make somebody else wealthy. This way, you know, I'm working full time to make myself wealthy, although I'm definitely making some other people wealthy, and that's great. But they're not people who are going to bother me. They're not like I didn't just go out and start selling people on the idea of doing something. I mean, these people know the business and they know me, and so it makes life a lot easier. But hey, I'm 72. That didn't happen overnight.
Took a lot of years.
It took a lot of years, and you know, there's like 4 different ways you can learn.
Yeah.
And There's experiential learning. You put the hand on a hot stove and you learn something, and you go to college and you get didactic learning where the teacher tells you something, you regurgitate it. But the higher learning is to learn from somebody else's mistakes, and so you don't have to make them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy, telling people the mistakes I made, so they don't make them.
Yeah.
So
they don't have to
do that all the time. I've lectured at LMU in their senior real estate class. I did that because there was a guy up here in Palos Verdes who was the professor, and he was doing that also for fun. He was already set up too, but it was a senior real estate class. It was a lot of fun, but since he retired, I haven't been doing that. But I like sharing. I mean, I don't mind telling anybody
I love
all
it.
my secrets.
It's important. No, it's
What do I
important.
care? In fact, I got a couple guys I work with. They're younger and they're learning quick, and I won't name names, but they know who they are if they watch this podcast. And I'm telling them everything I know, and they're just soaking it up like a sponge. They just love it.
Smart.
Yeah.
And you surround yourself with smart people, which, speaking of smart, what is your relationship with debt and real estate? Because when you look at real estate, debt and equity kind of go hand in hand when it comes to it. That's kind of the power of this business, of what it is. What has your relationship been with debt? And I guess how over the years has that approach changed at all, if any?
Yeah, so there was a time when you could get 80%, late 80s, early 90s, and that 80% was pretty common. And if you think about inflation, if it's just 5% over, I think it's slightly over 5% if you go back the last 40 years, inflation of real estate. And I'm talking about what I call a primary market. So if you're within 10 miles of the beach and between San Diego and Santa Barbara, that's the best weather in the country, maybe the best weather in the world. There's always going to be a buyer or a tenant at some price. Just is. So I don't go out to Bakersfield. I don't do those kinds of things. I stay in that primary market. That way I don't have to worry about there's going to be a demand at some point, at some price. So that's for other people who want to really speculate. Because I'm patient. I'll play the long game now, playing the long game. And let me go back to your question.
Yeah.
I don't think I answered it.
Yeah.
What was that last question?
The relationship with debt. With debt. Yeah.
The relationship was awesome because 5%, you put 20% down, you're making 25% on your money just on inflation every year.
Ah, yeah.
5x.
Yeah.
Because you only got 20% of the building. It's 5x just on inflation.
Wow.
On top of that, you got your cash flow. On top of that, you got your tax benefits, which you take depreciation. And sometimes you're taking a loan that has principal payments and that comes back to you too. It's just a forced savings account.
Yeah.
I don't like, I take mostly interest-only loans now, even though I may get a little bit less loan proceeds. But
why is that?
Because I like the present value of the money right now instead of waiting for get that principal back in 10 years or a 7-year loan or 10 years, because I don't get to use that for that period of time. So I go with the interest only, and my cash flow is greater, but I save up that cash flow. That's how I buy buildings. I save it up, put money in the piggy bank, take it out when I find a good deal.
So you're patient with that capital. So, okay, that makes sense to me, and that is a business plan in itself. When you're looking at these deals, right? You can go to a bunch of different banks. You probably, being in the business long enough, you have relationships with banks where there's some treatment, right? You know, you have holdings with them, which is nice, and they want to make sure that you are happy with that. Does debt ever change the way that you look at a deal? Like, if you see a deal and it makes sense, does debt have to make sense too?
Absolutely. Has to make sense. It's so I was very patient as the rates went up recently, and I just stored money from my cash flow in my buildings because I knew that either the prices were going to come down or the interest rate was going to come down. The interest rate hasn't come down that much, but it's come down a little bit recently, and I factor that in, of course. Um, since this is my business, I'm not too worried about, okay, I didn't, I'd love those old 80% loans, but it's a lot safer. You get more cash flow, and you're going to be able at a lower, you know, debt ratio. You're going to be able to outlast any change in the economy, because you're 50% leveraged. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna live through the ups and downs.
And we don't have vacancies that would really change the NOI significantly in the coastal markets, so you don't have to necessarily worry about that. It's the building's performance is really kind of going to be the building's performance. It might not go up as fast as you want, but it's the revenue, the NOI is typically not going to go down unless expenses get crazy, which insurance has been not that fun for a lot of people.
Oh, neither is utilities lately. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
With these fires, by the way, everybody's going to pay, including the tenants are going to pay for those fires.
Yeah.
And we're already paying it. We've watched, because the utility companies are getting hit, especially electricity, because they're getting charged for having started the fire. But they're public utility, they can't go under, so they gotta survive. So they'll survive paying back people by raising your electric overhead.
By charging it.
We're already seeing it. Gas, for some reason, natural gas right now has gone through the roof, and it's did that a few years ago. There was a big hit on it, and I'm doing transferring to RUBS on most of my buildings. Instead of giving somebody a rent increase, I tell me, just pay your utilities.
Yeah,
just pay your utilities. I won't give you a rent increase, and so that protects us somewhat, because we're under this statewide rent control, which can be brutal for some people who got caught with that while they were letting their tenants have very low rent. I got caught on it on some of the buildings, but it didn't affect me as much because we didn't stay that far under the market. We stay under the market because we'd like people to stay a long time. And we're not selling. So we have that advantage. I'm not selling the building. If I were selling a building, I'd be pushing the rent to the market and doing everything I can do. But by lower turnover, you've lowered your expenses, and you're coming out the same with a lot less work. So, if you do, as you were saying, you sell a building, you need to do a 1031 exchange. Otherwise, you're going to get taxed on if you made money. Right now there's people selling buildings that aren't going to get taxes. They didn't make any money. They got brutalized by these interest rates. People that COVID thing, that was once in a lifetime. We'll never see rates like that then.
No.
The banks were borrowing from the Fed at 0 or at 0.25%, at 20, basically zero. And just working on the spread.
Yeah.
Just put whatever their spread on it.
I know someone who got a 2.25% loan.
I got one at 2.45 on one building. Jeez. And it was 140 unit
less than
building.
Inflation. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was, and I just happened to be very lucky and hit it at that time. But when you got a lot of buildings like we do, you never know, because I spread out the hits. So I'll take 5, 7, and 10-year loans, and I don't want them all come and do it same time.
I was going to ask you, actually, what is so do you, almost like bonds, right? So you buy 6-year notes, 8-year, 12 month, 6 month, a year, 2 years. What length of time do you buy these loans, and are they typically fixed, or do you do floating rate debt?
I only do fixed.
Only fixed.
Only fixed. I used to have floating rates, and that's how I lost my ass in the early 90s. The rate floated beyond the income of the building.
And you're like, no more. I will not be doing that again.
Never do that again. I want to know what I'm facing.
How do you decide between 3, 5, 7, and 10?
Well, I don't do 3s and 5s if they are building with a lot of upside. And I think, in 5 years, I'm going to be, in a good space to do it a 5-year. And I spread them out. Right now, I've been doing some 7s lately, because I have some 5s. I have a lot of 10s, and I want to be in between that, because I don't want them all coming out in the same market because I don't want to take that risk, because it is a risk, let's face it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some good deals this last year. As you mentioned, I bought over 600 units, almost 700. That's the most ever in a year that I ever bought. But I saved up money over the couple of years because I could see it coming. Because, I mean, it was like no brainer. There's no way that the rates are going to stay at these rates. I mean, I remember, 5 years ago, you could get 3.5.
Yeah.
That same loan's coming due at 6 right now. There's no way. So that's about an 80% increase in your payment, right? There's no way you raised your rents 80% in those 5 years.
No.
There's no way.
Mm-mm.
So I knew that was coming, and that's why I bought all those buildings you were talking about. Because it was coming, and they were going, the sellers are freaking out.
Yeah.
And then some of the deals, I'm thinking of one of them, I followed it for like 2.5 years till the guy got reality. And it just kept coming, the values kept going down. I was going, I'm sure glad you didn't take my first offer. and then I looked at it again and didn't take my second offer. And finally, they hit reality. Reality comes up when their loan is due. And
how far from your first offer to where you bought it at was that delta?
That particular one that I'm thinking of, it was in Torrance. And I won't name names again.
Yeah.
I'm the listing agent because he's pretty well known. Anyway, I think I followed that deal for about 2.5, 3 years, and it came down from, it was a small building, 36 units, but it was near a building I had, so I don't mind that because I just give that to my on-site manager to manage. But they started at $14,750,000. I ended up buying it for $11,250,000. That's how big an 80% increase in payment will do.
Jeez,
that's what it'll do to
millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So you said you bought the most amount of buildings you've ever bought in a year last year. And then this year, obviously you bought a building as well. Can you tell me about what the last 12, 18 months have been, your philosophy regarding it, and then what you're thinking about like from today moving forward?
Well, there's two kinds of buildings I've been buying. Some of them, they still have the low interest rate loan on it, and it was an assumable loan. And they're thinking ahead too. They're looking at the nuclear weapon that's going to land at some point. Some of these deals are like 3-year deals, but I look at it and I just say, as long as it's not in rent control, I'm under statewide rent control. But if there's a lot of upside in that building, I'll take it and take my chances in 3 years. There's 3 years left. One of them had 4 years left. And I'm taking that lower rate, knowing that I'm going to get a higher rate. I'm judging. I'm basing. You have to predict some things and take a chance. As I told Michael Dirk, if I had a crystal ball, I'd own the world. And he goes, well, what's the crystal ball telling me? I go, well, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know if you see this, but he came here last week after so many times of saying it, and he gave me the crystal ball.
That's so cool.
So now
that is amazing.
So that should help me along the way.
I sure hope so, for sure.
We hope so.
Yeah.
So the other buildings were the like that one that I followed way down. We were talking about the 36 unit. There was no loan on it. It was paid off. No assumable loan. So I had to get a loan. And I bought it all cash, and I waited till the market sometimes dips on the interest rate, and was able to get a 5.2. It dipped. I grabbed the loan real quick,
and
then put that loan on, because I got it at about a 5.2 cap, so it wasn't negative leverage.
That's actually another question I have. What are the metrics that you are looking for when you're buying a deal? Is it a certain percentage above the market cap rate? Is it a cash on cash return? Like, do you look at deals that way, basis? Like, what's when do you know you want to buy a deal?
Well, there's so many factors.
Yeah.
Obviously area becomes important. I won't buy anything more than an hour north or an hour south of my office, because we're hands-on. and I don't want to make it too tough on everybody, including myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you have to look at that. My forte is B areas. I like them a lot. I mean, in a C area, you can line the walls with gold, and you won't get any more rent because that's all they can pay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in an A area, very hard to find a deal like that where they haven't been keeping up the building, or value added in an area is pretty hard to find, and that's what everybody wants. So everybody jumps on that deal, and they drive it up to the price where it's hardly worth it. You know, your cap rate's low, so you're not getting that cash flow. But it's a flight to safety, and I understand that for some people, they want that safety feeling. Yeah, they want to be right on the beach, right? Basically, right?
Mhm.
So that there's no money to be made.
You see those Esplanade deals, and you're like,
Yeah,
that does not make any money at all.
no, but but you feel good.
Yeah, you do.
Safe.
Yeah.
You don't making money that you can go invest somewhere else. So that's why I like B areas, because they're more dynamic. People in a B area have a little bit of excess income they can spend, and they'll spend it based on, okay, yeah, I want a nice looking kitchen. I want the quartz. I don't want this cheapy stuff or plastic
Mm-hmm.
countertops, etc. And then you experiment to see how much money you're going to put into the unit and how much more you can get. And it's not an exact science. I wish it was, but we have to go out there and experiment and see
Yeah.
what works and where to cut it off. I mean, even in a B area, you can line the walls with gold, and you're not going to get enough money to pay yourself back.
Yeah.
But also by doing that, you get usually a better class of tenant, making your life easier.
Mm-hmm. What have you figured out in your markets, which is like Torrance, Orange County, South Bay? What is the typical unit reno cost for you? What have you figured out so far?
Well, the money mostly goes into kitchens and bathrooms.
Okay.
So it's the same cost to renovate a studio as a one bedroom. You might spend a little more money on the flooring because more square footage in that. But they both have kitchens. They both have a bathroom. 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I'm guessing I could get it done for $18,000. It could be more or less.
Yeah. But around that 20,000, and then a one bed, maybe 12 to 15.
Yeah. And then again, it's a question of sometimes you can save some of the stuff. And it's not, like I said, not an exact science, because I've been in some of them that need a lot of work, except that they just had put in a brand new floor. I'll save that floor.
Yeah.
It's a lot of training of managers so they don't get on automatic. You get a vacancy.
They're not pulling it up.
The same thing with a paint job. Somebody, obviously the tenant only left, they were only there a year. The paint's not that bad. It's got holes in the wall from the pictures and stuff, but you can train your maintenance guy to fill those holes and just touch up paint. Keep that paint around. You can save a lot of money if you start thinking in those terms. A lot of managers or management or owners are, the person moved out, we got to paint it again. But you have to think about it. There's a lot of things to think about.
Are you good at delegating?
I believe I am. I think that's one of my strengths. Yeah.
And what does that look like for you in the day-to-day? Like, give me a day in the life in terms of, what are you doing most of the days?
This I get once a month, monthly statements.
Okay.
On the buildings.
So how they're running?
These are my notes on each building. There's a building name.
And
that one had a lot of notes. This one, look, this one just says very good. And I have 5 people that specialize in different areas in the company. I give this to them at the end of the month after I've gone through that. And then, we're on Appfolio, and I had my Appfolio guy, just so they don't have to read every line. Just have it show up in red where it's out of norm, and you can see the out of norm line.
Got it. So, and you trust them to do the renovations. And if you buy a building, are you saying, okay, we need to spend this much, this much, this much? Or do you have someone who knows what you do, knows the numbers, and they're going to go ahead and handle all that?
I don't put budgets on my maintenance. I don't put budgets on my turnovers, because they're all different and it screws them up. So you tell somebody there's a budget of, $18,000 when it wasn't necessary to spend $18,000, but they're going to spend it. And then there are other cases where, hey, I should have gone to $22,000 because we needed to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't do that. I go there, I walk it, and I train them. And of course, there comes a point where, you're not going to, yeah, there is a limit to how much you're going to spend. But there's also that point is that, if the, the countertop is beat to crap and you're going to spend that extra nickel, whatever it is to put it in, even if you're in a C area.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not going to get the right tenant. If you get a tenant in there that doesn't care about that, probably not the kind of person that you want to get as a tenant.
Yeah. There's
Especially
the
with
standard stuff that you do.
Yeah, if you can't keep the front of the buildings clean,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you wanted some funny stories.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't name names, but I was out. I was going up to a friend's place and on a weekend, and I went right by one of my buildings. And I stopped, just check it out, and there was some trash out in the front and that. And I rang the buzzer, and then manager let me in, of course. Started talking to him. I go, well, how come you're not at the beach? He goes, well, I got a couple vacancies, and it's a weekend. It's a high volume. I go, yeah, but you should be at the beach. Well, I don't usually go to the beach, but, I'll do what you ask me to do. Yeah, because if somebody comes through, there's a lot of trash out in front of the building right now. It was a busy street.
Uh-huh.
And I go, if somebody comes through your door and wants to rent from you still, I don't want to rent to him. So take the day off.
Yeah.
You're not in the rental business.
Yeah. I'm not renting to the people who want to live in a place where there's trash in the front of the apartment building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There's different kinds of tenants. You have to decide which one you want.
So that's clearly very important to you is making sure that your building runs. It's a business. Each building is almost as a business, and you want to make sure that it looks and runs like the business that you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are in your organization to run 4,000 units? How many people do you need? Not necessarily like on sites, but
well, are you counting maintenance men? Are you counting property on-site managers, assistant?
Give me the range.
Managers.
Yeah.
As employees, we have probably 130.
That's including managers?
Maintenance men.
Okay.
And then we're probably understaffed in maintenance because we don't want to be overstaffed because you have to pay them even when you don't have enough maintenance for them.
Uh-huh.
That's where you can be understaffed. And right here in my headquarters, we have 14 people counting me. So,
and what is their
5 of them are very good at what they do. I've got a guy who's got a degree in computer science. He's doing the websites, doing the payroll, doing all that great stuff, and talking to the managers and getting things changed on several things. He negotiates the contracts with these websites and telephones and stuff. And then there's another guy. My CEO. He got a computer science degree from Yale, and also he got an MBA from UCLA. I won't hold that against him.
Or Mr. USC.
He's pretty smart.
Yeah.
But he's got that MBA and that background as well. And I got a guy that was a contractor doing tenant improvements for large development companies on mostly offices or retail space. And he's now managing the maintenance men and doing that. And I have this girl that's really good at going out and getting bids on things. There's times you got to replace the roof, you got to plumbing, you got all kinds, but that kind of thing. She's bidding all day long, and getting the best guy. The lowest bidder sometimes is not your best bet because they don't do it right or they take too long to do it, and then you're better off to getting somebody. So that's not an exact science. You have to experiment and you see what works.
What do you think your contrarian view is that other people think is normal?
Contrarian. Well, that's a tough question because I would say that a lot of people think that, the buying and selling, fixing up unit, buying and selling a building is the way to make money. But if you don't trade that building, you're going to give a lot of it to Uncle Sam. So that would be one of them. I probably pay my people more than it's contrarian to what other people are paying. But, you spend a lot of time training them, and it's a lot of work, and they're happy, and happy managers usually will get happy tenants, and happy tenants are good tenants. So one of the things I tell people, and I don't know how contrarian it is, but when I'm hiring a manager, I'll always ask them this question: what do you think the 3 most important things are to be successful as a manager? And they'll come up with some stuff, and being really good in communication or things like that. I go, great. Okay, now here's my 3 things. Uh, screening the tenants, and screening the tenants. Those are my 3 things you need. And if you do those 3 things well, you will be successful and your life will change.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's it. It's as simple as that. Get good tenants in the buildings, and everything else, the business plan will follow if the tenants are in the units and they're happy because they stay.
And you talked about contrarian.
Yeah.
So as the rent goes up, so like it's $4,000 rent, let's say, and I'll take somebody, at 2.5 to 1 times the rent, or even less than that, because I know they can live on the other $4,000. They could be at 2 to 1. But I see people think that as the rent is higher, they're going to go 3 to 1. But people down there that can only afford a $1,500 rent, we better go, 2.5 to 1 on the rent, because these are people who are just barely making it. So
Rent to
have
income.
to go at 2.5 to 1. I go, no. With people that want that rent, they got to be at 3 to 1 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that I know they can pay the rent, because they got to have enough money to still live on.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can shrink down on the higher units because there's enough money to still be able to live on. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that's contrary.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. That's very smart. That's like a psychology thing. Like there's some thought, and I mean, your experience.
It's a math thing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have an experience with math because I was pretty good at it, although I quit.
You still I can tell you still pretty analytical from the math perspective. You probably can look at a building, and when a broker sends you numbers, and you can decide within 5 minutes if it's going to be a deal you want to pursue.
Yeah, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then if I go out to go look at a building, chances are very high I'm going to make an offer on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or buy it. If I make an offer on a building, my chances of being the buyer are about 80%. So I got a reputation of closing and not making it hard on agents. I was an agent. I made my living that way long enough to know what they're going through. And since 1994, every escrow I've gotten into, I closed.
Since 94.
1994. Well, I was in that business. That's how I made a living.
Yeah.
And I would never do that to another agent. And they know it. So I already have that reputation, and I'm glad to have it. I'm not going to change.
I love that. I love selling to people like that. That should be its own pitch, is like, barring, I mean, even if you found a foundation issue or some big thing like that, would you still buy the deal, or you'd ask for credit, negotiation, stuff like that?
Well, I would go back so in 94, there was a deal like that where we found some stuff, and I thought about it, and I went, unless you're going to fix it this first, I'm not closing. I'm not going to buy this deal. But now I haven't really had that issue. Most of the, usually what I ask for from the seller is pretty reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I like them to fix any active leaks while we're in escrow. That's about it. I'm going to get a termite report. And sometimes I ask them for a credit. And when the termites work is really bad, I say, hey, my termite guy said, you never did treat the termites in those 40 years you own this building.
Oh my God.
I'm going, you realize I got to get everybody out, and what that's going to cost? especially if you're getting like a Fannie Mae loan or something
Yeah.
like that where they require it. And usually they'll come around and they'll go, okay, well, how much, they'll say, well, how much of a credit do you need? And I'll give them that number, and they usually don't want to deal with it. And they'll usually give that
Got it.
number.
Because they're going to have to do it anyways.
They're going to have to do it whether they sell it to me or not.
Yeah.
They now realize that they made a mistake.
You're not using it as a leverage point. You're doing it as like, hey, you're going to pay this or I'm going to pay this, but you're going to pay this. I'm going to buy this deal. So the math makes sense. You put it in math terms for them, right? They can understand the math from.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
What is your non-obvious prediction moving forward? Like, you're 72 years old.
Yes.
You bought 700 units the last year. You bought a deal this year. What does the future look like for Jerry?
Well, I'm a workaholic. I've seen people retire. They don't do so well. They keep, I need to be productive. I like using my brain. I think that might keep me alive longer, or at least while I'm alive, at least happier. I don't need the money. And so people always ask me, to slow down. I just read this book called Slow Down to the Speed of Joy. A friend of mine, one of my best friends, gave it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very good book for me to read because I'm always looking at how to be productive. I'll have a list of things that I'm trying to accomplish, and I'll take them in order of priority, and then the list never ends. It's going to rotate, and I have to train other people about that too. I go, hey, don't worry, you're always going to have something to do, at least around my office. But the future for me will be, I will work till the day I die, and because I like it, I do. But I have hobbies. I like to travel. That's hobby number one. I like my outrigger canoe team and paddling and
win those races.
Win the races, or try to win races. Don't always win, which is
you're enjoying life. You're enjoying and I'm the same way. Like for me, if I can enjoy the moments of what I'm doing day to day, then why would I want to do anything else like that? If it's fun to me, if the work is fun and engaging and I like it, what am I going to do else? I don't like anything else more than what I'm doing. So I think that's a good approach to do that. And not a lot of people like what they're doing. So I think it's hard for them to understand someone who does.
I feel sorry for kids growing up nowadays. I mean, back when I was growing up, I mean, it was just automatic that you're going to just take the job you can get, and it didn't have to be the job of your dreams. You have to put food on the table and pay the rent. And you took that job. Now the kids in school, the teachers are telling them, you should take a job that's going to make you happy. Something that is you're going to be, that you have joy about, and they're getting all of that information. Well, they did a study, God, I can't remember the name of it, 4 or 5 years ago, of people, and they're asking people across the country, are you fulfilled by your job? Does your job make you happy, basically? 83% said no. I was stunned. I was like, no, I don't. It's not the job of my dreams. I'm not in the job of my dreams, which is what they've been teaching.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of jobs that weren't the jobs of my dreams. I enjoyed the development business when I was building from the ground up because you really get excited. You go there when the framing is going up and you smell the sawdust and you go, oh, I created this. And I do a lot of my own, like I fix all the architecture mistakes that the architects are making, et cetera, because even the architects miss a lot of stuff. But so yeah, that was fun. However, it is too difficult in the state of California now, and it's not fun anymore. It's just too difficult for a lot of reasons. So I just rather buy an existing building. I'll rehabilitate it and keep it for investment. I've bought some buildings that didn't need very much work just because I saw that they were a good deal.
Yeah.
They were in my wheelhouse, the right size, right in the right area, and near other buildings. So it was going to be easy to manage.
It's going to make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. Before we wrap up, if someone wanted to be you in 30, 40, 50 years, right? They're 22, 23, 30 years old. What advice would you give them to try to get to that level? Try to own 4,000 apartment units.
You got to think long, because I went broke a couple times early. It was over leveraged, overmatched. I had too much going on, and I didn't have enough people around me to help me with it. And so if I'd have thought long, obviously I would have done a lot better. There's a lot of things, where I made mistakes, but you got to keep going, and you got to have goals. I mean, I donate a lot of money, and it makes me happy too.
Mhm.
And I need that money to do it. And I'm chairman of the fundraising for the YMCA and other, the local hospitals. I mean, I donate to about 100 different nonprofits.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So for you, are you saying that they need to have a why? Like, is that your why?
I think so. It's one of my whys for sure.
Yeah.
I like going there and seeing the buildings. Where we almost always do some kind of remodeling to it, and I love that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Picking the right paint colors here and putting that there, and take this tree out, and then do this stuff, and just I enjoy that. Probably my favorite part. I take my managers on a retreat every year. We've been to Hawaii, and last year we went to Costa Rica, and so I take about 110 people
Wow.
on this, and I spoil them. It's my chance to really spoil them, and we have a good time. We do it every year, anywhere from 4 days to 7-day trips.
That's
We
amazing.
go all over.
Would you buy in California? Like, if you're 22 and you say, hey, you want to grow a portfolio,
Yeah.
would you tell them that they should invest in California?
Well, like I said, that area that I mentioned, there's a lot of headwinds in California because of our government has gone so far to the left that you never know when they're going to take your property, in which in some cases they really have.
Mm-hmm.
There's some cities where the rent increases that are allowed. I won't name names, but you guys can figure them out. It's 60% of CPI or 3%, whichever is lower. Well, the Fed is trying to get CPI to 2. If it's at 60% of CPI, that's 1.2% that you can raise your rent. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Your expenses will go up faster than that.
Mm-hmm.
You will go backwards,
Yeah.
not forward. And it's unfortunate that our government is this stupid, but it is a free market. It's a free market, and they don't it should be a free market.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there would be a lot more people building, and that would be, there would be more supply, but they've constrained the supply, which puts pressure on the rent. Not only that, is the rent control when somebody gets out of college and wants to buy or wants to rent a place, it's very high because you can charge whatever you want when it's empty.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're getting punished for these rent controls. And there's a lot of other punishment that goes along with rent controls that I've seen. It's really affected me where, the people around me can't afford. I wasn't highly leveraged, but the people around me can't afford to maintain. And I'm thinking in my roughest areas, they've gone way downhill because they don't have to keep the outside fixed up. The rent's so low that people live there anyway.
Mm-hmm. The math doesn't make sense. Yeah. Why would you put money in if you can't achieve the rents?
Yeah. So you would, I would advise not to be in these liberal cities where they want to give the rent away. Here's what's so strange. How can I charge more than somebody can afford to pay? If I do that, I'll have an empty unit. I mean, if they can't afford to pay, then I got to evict them. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And nobody can do that.
No.
And the politicians are idiots. Pardon my language out there, politicians. You're idiots. I can't charge. The market is the market, and when you mess with that market, you mess with so many other things that go along with that.
Mm-hmm. The
And-
downstream effects of that
Yeah.
are just rippling, and it screws everything up.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
frustrating.
There's times when the market is just, I can't raise it anymore, which it's kind of close to that right now.
Yeah,
Even though you've given me 8% to raise it, I can't do it.
yeah,
And I don't do it because they'll move out.
yeah. And then I'll have a vacant unit.
So it's like a big duh. I mean, but I don't know what's going on. They didn't take economics 101.
Yeah.
Every politician should be forced to do that.
They should understand. I think if you're going to make business decisions that affect not only your tenants, your constituents, but the landlords who are providing the housing, you should at least be a landlord or understand what goes into running a building. Because if you don't understand what's behind that, and you're making these broad stroked decisions, the downstream effects, like you said, it cascades much farther than just real estate. It cascades much farther than just the rent the tenants are paying. It's the jobs in the area. It's the people that can afford those jobs. It's so many things. Who wants to live in those neighborhoods? And you're changing the fabric of an area.
You are.
Right?
I've seen it. I've seen it when people were a specific area. It's in the unincorporated area of LA County, but it's between Gardena.
The Harbor Gateway.
It's near Gardena. It's got a Gardena PO. And I have properties there. And I fixed them up, and my neighbors are fixing them up and everything. And all of a sudden, the county supervisors, boom, they put this 3% like rent control on. And the guy next door to me was halfway through his renovation. He just stopped. And I'm trying to, I asked him what's going on. He goes, I get the same rent anyway, whether I renovate it or not, because it's not going to change.
Yeah.
I'm going, oh yeah. And then there were 2 murders on that street, and people that were willing to live there are here illegally. And I really can't get out of that deal because I took depreciation on it, and
That recaptures and not good.
but I have a lot of vacancy there now because we won't take bad tenants.
Yeah.
And what they've done, what the supervisors did was create a little slum. And it was just going so great. It was going in the right direction, cleaning up, looking nicer, people putting more money into the outside and the inside of the units. And they destroyed it.
Man. Well, I know you got to catch a flight. You're heading to Germany. Jerry, I'm very appreciative. Thank you for sharing this. And I'm looking forward to hopefully people are learning some things from this and seeing you. Hopefully we can do a deal together soon.
Yeah.
If we find one in the area, and we'll make it work. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. I enjoyed it as well. And I appreciate you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah.
Perfect.